All right, so when we're multiplying mixed numbers, you change mixed numbers to improper fractions before you multiply. Look at my first problem. 3/4 is okay. That's a proper fraction. But I have a mixed number here. Raise your hand if you know how to change this. Lucy.
We do 3 times 1 and then add 2.
Okay, so I'm going to take 3 times 1, that's 3,
And that's for the numerator.
and add 2. So 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2 is 5. So that's actually 5/3. And then I keep the 3/4. So good job. If you see something we can do to this, Priya.
You can divide both 3s by 3.
Yeah, you can divide both of these 3's by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And then we just multiply across. So 5 times 1 is 5. And 1 times 4 is 4. And we ended up with an improper fraction, but that's okay. Can anybody tell me, how do we change that back to a mixed number? Go ahead, Josie.
We divide the 4 and the 5.
Yeah, so I'm going to take 5 and divide by 4. How many times does 4 go into 5? Once, yeah. Good job. We all had it. Everybody's like with a 1. So then 1 times 4 is 4. So this is going to be my whole number. And then I have a remainder of 1. So how does that come into my mixed number, that remainder? Priya.
You put it over the 4.
Put it over the 4. So this means I have 1/4 left over. So this is the same thing as 1 and 1/4. Most of the time, what you guys are going to see in middle school is they're going to change the final answer back to a mixed number. And it sounds like everybody's seen that before, but we're probably a little fuzzy. It's been a little while. And so you do have to remember those skills. Going to an improper, going from improper to a mixed number. All of those skills from 4th and 5th grade are coming back to haunt you. They're going to show up in these problems. The multiplying part works just like what we were doing before. You can cross-cancel, multiply across. But if you don't cross-cancel, like I said, those numbers are going to be huge. It's going to be really, really interesting. Okay, now we have to change everything into just a fraction with a top and a bottom. 5 is not a fraction. How do I make it a fraction? Ava. Put a 1 there. So that's going to be 5 over 1. And then somebody else tell me what to do with 3.5. I got a lot of the same people raising their hands. Mackenzie.
You would basically you multiply 3 times 2 and then you add the 6 to the 1.
Okay, so 3 times 2 is 6. You add the 1, which gives us how much?
That gives you 7.5.
7, and then you keep the halves on the bottom. I think the part that I've seen people messing up the most, because this showed up a little bit on our starters, is you keep the denominator. When you're doing the multiplying and adding, that's just getting the numerator. Now, is there anything here that can cross-cancel?
No.
Okay, so we're trying to raise our hands, but really this is easy. It's just no. 5 doesn't reduce with 2, 7 and 1, there's nothing to do. So then it's just a normal multiplying fractions problem. You multiply across. So I'm going to have 5 times 7, 35, good, and 1 times 2 is 2. And that's very improper. So we'll just take a second. We've got lots of room over here to do a little scratch work. And we'll divide 35 and 2 and change that back to a mixed number. Okay, so make sure everybody's had a second to write that down, process what we're doing.
Do we have to do the division?
If you can do this part in your head, I'm okay with it. Because some of you do. Some of us are not there yet, so I always show this because not everybody can do it in their head. So if I'm not sure, I just set it up. 2 goes into 3 one time. 1 times 2 is 2. You subtract. You have 1. Bring down the 5. 2 goes into 15. 7 times 2 is 14. And then this remainder tells you how many fractional parts you have left. So the 17 up here, that's my whole number. And then this 1 tells me I have 1/2 left. So if you know that 17 times 2 is 34 and you can do that in your head, that part I'm okay with. You've been doing that for a while. Some of us, though, when they get to 6th, 7th grade are still a little fuzzy. So I always kind of show, hey, you could work this out using a little long division if you need to. Okay? So Lots of fractions, because fractions happen. Let's go ahead and look at the next one. So 3 1/4. Someone who's not answered anything, raise your hand and tell me how to make that improper. I'm going to have to start calling. Ellie.
You would multiply 4 times 3.
Good.
And then you'd add the 1, and that would be 13. So it's 13 fourths.
Okay, so 4 times 3 is 12, plus 1 is 13, so that's 13 fourths. And then 4/5 is okay. All right, somebody else. I want people who haven't been responding. I know, some of you are just excited to answer. I know, but some people are just sitting there letting everybody else do the work. So I'm going to have to start calling on people if you don't volunteer. So you've done 1, 2. Silas, tell me what I can do with this to make it easier. You can divide the 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 4 divided by 4 is 1. That means I don't have to take 13 times 4, which is a good thing. We don't want to have to do that. So now I just take 13 times 1. It's 13. 1 times 5 is 5. And then, so some of you can do this in your heads. Who can talk me through what you're doing in your head when you're changing it? Lucy.
Well, I do 10, which can be like the lowest number.
Mm-hmm.
The closest number that can be divided by 5.
Okay.
And then dividing to that, and the remaining is the fraction.
Okay, so she's saying that 5 times 2 is 10, and that's the closest she can get to going into 13. So she puts 2 there, because 2 times 5 is 10, and then the leftover is 3. That's what she's doing in her head. Just really quick, some of us are not as good at this, just because I've seen it. And so if you need to, you can come over and set up a long division problem. It's 13 divided by 5, and it's the same thing, it's just writing it out. I'm not going to make you do this, but if it's something that you need to do to keep track, it's fine. 5 goes into 13. 2 times 5 is 10. You have a remainder of 2. That tells me how many fifths are left over. So this remainder becomes the fractional part. I'm sorry, it's 3. 3 minus 0 is 3, because I can do math and they pay me. It's great. I'm recording this too, so it's great. So this is something, if you need to write it out, if you get lost inside your brain trying to do that, I was that kind of student. I have trouble visualizing stuff in my head. I have to write everything down. I can't do things out loud, can't do a lot of things in my head. So I would just do this really quick. It's nothing to be, it's just what it is. If you got to write it out, do what you got to do. Okay, so the second half is going to be mixed number times mixed number. So it gets a little more exciting. I'll leave that last one up there. I think everybody was done writing. So we've got to change both of these to improper. Okay, so I need people to volunteer as tribute here. Okay, so you guys have answered a lot. Oh, Rowan hasn't answered. Tell me what to do. Huh? How do I change 3 1/3 into an improper fraction? Your hand was up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Take a second, it's fine.
Yes, you're getting there.
You're getting there. So 3 times 3, and then add the 1. So 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10 thirds. Good. So now that we've done that one, Quaylen, you're going to help me with the next one. 4 1/2. Tell me what to do.
2 times 4.
Good.
Add 1.
And add 1. So 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. And that just gives me 9/2. Oh, the other thing I did not point out, on some of these I have the X for the times sign, and on some of these I have the little dot. It's going to go back and forth. You're going to see both in middle school. Then in high school it's mostly just the dot. I don't know, it's like a transition time. They do a little bit of both, so I try to put a little bit of both in the notes. Okay, there is a lot of stuff we can do to this so that we don't have to reduce a bunch at the end. What can we cancel out? Titus. I know, but since you haven't been volunteering, I'm telling you're gonna do this. So what can we cancel?
9 and 3 goes into 1 on the 3, and 3 on the 9
Okay, so we're dividing 9 by 3 to get 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1.
Yeah, and then 10 divided by 2 is 5.
Okay.
Divided by 2 is 1.
All right, so 10 divided by 2 is 5, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. And now look, on the bottom I just have 1. It's going to be a whole number. And then 5 times 3, go ahead and tell me.
15.
Good, I can tell she's just bursting. All right. And so we get 15. I know some of them want to answer everything, and some of them are like, I want to sink into my chair. You can't see me. Okay, so that's a good start to this. Here's what I'm going to do. This is a really long lesson. I'm going to stop here for right now. We'll call this part 1, and we'll do part 2 later. So I'm going to stop recording.